Greetings, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today we have our friend Evan Herman from Oklahoma, and he is the host of the Whole Person podcast. You can find it on YouTube and podcasting websites. But first, please stop what you're doing, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. Always need more volunteer dreamers. 12 currently available books of historical dream literature. You can make direct donations, buy a t-shirt, all that good stuff. And I do need your support. If you like what I do, please pick up a book. I put a lot of work into them, heart and soul, and it's quality product. So that's enough shilling on my end. Back to our guest, Evan Herman, and it is the Whole Person podcast, not just the Whole Person podcast. It's actually got the THE in front of it, like in the background.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, good. I wanted to make sure because on audio only, like I put these up as a podcast on audio only podcast on my website, so I want people to be able to find you. So we only talked briefly before everything started, and I really know totally nothing about you, and I'd love to hear more. So what is the Whole Person podcast?
Yeah, so the Whole Person revolves around 6 areas of someone's life: faith, family, finances, friendship, fitness, and fun/function, which is like purpose. And these are the main areas of life that if they are out of balance or out of whack, that they affect all other areas. And a lot of people, including myself, has struggled with learning how to live a life of significance in these areas. And so over the past 3 years, I've dedicated myself to learning how to live a more holistic approach. And I didn't say balanced, but a more holistic approach, because sometimes what I've learned is you need to live out of balance to actually have balance. Mm-hmm. And I know that's an oxymoron. Let's say my health is really bad, which at one point I had some major issues going on. Well, it affected my marriage. It affected my work. It affected my sleep. It affected my fitness. It affected every area. So I changed the way I eat. I go lose 30 pounds. And then all those other areas benefit from my personal health journey. And so I've learned in my life, if my faith relationship with God is out of whack, then I become more anxious and I'm more irritable towards the people around me. I have less faith and hope and outlook. And so in these areas, I've realized that we need to take a holistic mindset in each one of these areas. And so I've been talking about that for near almost 3 years now, and I've had amazing guests who are very proficient in each and one of those areas.
Yeah, as you were describing it, number one, I want to say love the alliteration. Makes my autistic mind very happy. Everything starts with the letter F. I just get a happy feeling just knowing that exists. And then I started drawing like a cheese wheel in my mind, the classic pie and all these different slices. And I started imagining what it looks like to have different pie slice quantities in each area, and you want them all balanced. And then the idea you were saying of being out of balance to achieve balance, it's like I think of it like a ship, or I think I'm eating a piece of my beard. Yeah. There it is. We don't need that. Not that protein. Like in order to turn a ship or a motorcycle, you got to lean. You got to put yourself out of balance to change direction. And it's establishing a new balance when you get back to that course correction, whatever it's going to be. So it's very, and I'm a big fan of the yin yang model of things, and the idea that, everything is a balance of opposites. But if you take a kind of a horizontal slice of the yin yang at any given point, sometimes it's more black, sometimes it's more white, sometimes it's mostly black and or just a little black and mostly white, and then a little slice of that black circle that's over there too. And it's all these different combinations that I love that phrasing. Sometimes you got to put yourself out of balance to find that holistic resolution to whatever you're dealing with. So it's a fantastic model. I hope you are working on a book, actually. That sounds like a great concept to explain and share. Yeah. I mean, 6 chapters describing each, and maybe a 7th for how to pull it all together.
It's not a bad idea.
I would encourage it if you feel motivated and inspired, but you've probably, since you've had all these conversations, you could, take examples from it. So anyway, not for me to say what you should or shouldn't do, but I'd buy it. That sounds pretty cool.
Awesome. Yeah. I will put that in. I have a gauntlet of book ideas. And so ironically, I've never thought about writing a book specifically called that. So I'm I'm writing that down after the show.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, if I could serve it, you could put a little on the dedication page to the DreamWizard, right? Just for encouragement. Why not?
Who's the DreamWizard?
Yeah. Well, then they should look me up. I just kind of appeared out of nowhere, started doing this. So I spent 20 years in emergency psychiatric inpatient care, and then changed direction. Figured that I couldn't do that anymore. That's a tough thing, and very few people make it 20 years before they pull the ripcord and got to jump out of the plane. But yeah, this is more satisfying for me. These process with dreams and whatnot. And I know you said you'd been familiar with dreams throughout your life. You've actually looked at your own and kind of analyzed them. And you had a book there you were going to reference maybe later. Yeah. What was that book? I was curious.
Yeah. So one of the first books I read on dreams, it's called Understanding the Dreams You Dream, Biblical Keys for Hearing God's Voice in the Night. And here's a photo for those who are on YouTube.
Very cool.
This is one of the first books I read when I was in college, but I started having experiences with dreams in high school. And actually, it was really unique. I was probably a senior in high school, and I just had this dream where I walked to this mountain's edge, and I just saw this beautiful landscape of just mountains. And it was like I looked out, and it was almost a circle of mountains. But with the one on the right side, the right one kind of came off from the distance, kind of diagonal, kept going, while another set of mountains came this way. And so I was like, I don't know, on one side looking and overviewing just this beautiful mountainscape. And I woke up and I was just so enamored by the dream I just had. I tried to draw it to the best of my ability. Never really thought of anything of it. And then, I don't know, a month, 2 later, just so happened to be taking a trip in Colorado and decided to go on a 4-wheeler ride where I almost lost my life. I was riding the 4-wheeler, and I don't know what the term is, but I went 2 wheels off the trail, like the side of the bike. So I was literally teeter-tottering on the side of a mountain. And I mean, it was like, if you fall, you're gone. You're gone. And so I just knew I couldn't figure out how to get it back onto the mountain. So I just stopped, got off, and I just stood there. And then people realized I was no longer in the group, and someone came back and they helped me. So anyway, but after that, we came to this lookout spot. And what ended up happening is it's like, oh, hey, that's cool. And then got on the 4-wheeler and kept going. But then I was like, wait, no, go back and look at that. And so I went back and I looked at that spot, and then I just realized, oh my gosh, this was my dream from several months back. And we had no plans of going to Colorado when I had the dream. And it was almost identical to what I could remember. And remember, I even drew it out. And so when I got back home, I was like, that was it. And I just remember, like, all right, why did I have this dream? What was the purpose? And for that moment, it was the beginning of realizing, hey, I'm going to have a gifting from God that gives me the ability to have dreams and then have understanding of those dreams, whether it's either in the future or if I get an interpretation from God right away. And since that moment, I started having, let's just call them baby dreams. And what I mean by that is nothing of real significance, nothing profound, but just little dreams that would come to pass. And through this process, it was a spiritual gift that God was training me in to learn, to understand, to interpret. Because you can't go from 1 to 100 with complete knowledge, understanding, and skill set. There's a training process that's happening. And so, so naturally, God took me on this path of having dreams, understanding them, being able to interpret them, and then them coming to pass in very small ways. So like one day I would have a dream, and then the next morning I'd go to school, and then exactly what I dreamed would come to pass. And then learning how to not write dreams off. Because sometimes we write dreams off, and oh, that was just a dream. But then it comes to fruition, and it actually had more significance. And so learning the balance of growing in that gift is something that God took me on a long journey of. And now, you know, I'm in a spot where when I have dreams, sometimes they're immediately interpreted, that I'll know what they are. And sometimes, this is more rare, but sometimes someone will have a dream and tell me, and then I'll know the interpretation for that dream.
Mm-hmm.
That part is less rare for me, but it occasionally happens.
Gotcha.
So it's just this, man, I've had so many.
That's kind of amazing, and a long history of it too. I'm kind of the opposite of you in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of things you said that I was like, that's cool. I'm trying to remember to go back.
Well, we can go back whenever you want.
Well, for sure. Yeah, no, but all the way back to like, so there's maybe, less than the fingers on my hand of dreams that I can remember that I've had. I very often wake up remembering a dream experience occurred. No clear sequence of events, nothing I can interpret about myself, just not there for whatever reason. So I think that's part of my fascination with other people's dreams. But then also the abstract connection thing, and you were talking about developing a talent. I've always kind of had this throughout my life of being able to make abstract connections and metaphorical stuff and interpreting symbols in broad ways, seeing all the different ways they might apply to situations. But the training process for me in this last year and a half, however long I've been doing this, is and I made a video on this way back in the day saying that, I consider myself, when I started this project, a level 1 wizard, D&D style. You're technically a wizard. You get your first spell book, you get your first spell, you can do the thing, you got the robes, but that's where it begins. That's when you're a serious beginner. You're not. There's a road and a process to getting better at this, and hopefully, as folks have been watching my development, they've seen that it's improved kind of along the way. So there's definitely that training aspect of it too. Yeah. And you said on the idea of what people would call prophetic dreams.
Very prophetic.
So now you're definitely coming from a very Christian perspective, and your faith is important to you, and you're very open to that. And I am as well, but from a explicitly agnostic atheist perspective of there's more under the sun than my philosophy can encompass, Horatio, Shakespeare style. So I don't discount those things, but it's very outside my psychological, biological, medical framework of where I believe most of this stuff comes from, except the stuff that I can't explain, which I don't dismiss, but I don't know what to do with it. So it's like I kind of set that aside and say, not my specialty. That did remind me, though, the second book, and we were talking about like the translating Latin and stuff. The second book I published was called The Mystery of Dreams, explicitly a sermon given by a 16th century preacher on how to properly understand dreams from a Christian perspective. So being agnostic, atheist, and open to all kinds of things, looking at dream interpretation, I go to the ancient Greek stuff. I go to the explicitly Christian stuff. I put out a audio series. You'll have to find it on Rumble or somewhere else. That was a Muslim perspective on dream interpretation. So, and I think it is very important, and to Christian folks who may be seeing me for the first time, I do not believe I do not believe I am in possession of any magical powers. The wizard thing is a branding, and it's a metaphysical, philosophical perspective. I have this idea of wizardry being a wise old man.
You remind me of the dyslexic agnostic insomniac.
Yeah, that's a guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a guy. He stayed awake all night wondering if there really was a dog.
There you go. But this is also, so if I'm open-minded,
Right.
without claiming to have communications with spirits or hearing the voice of God, I very much look at what I do as a gift in that sense of like, I didn't, as much as I'm working to develop a talent, that talent came from somewhere. You can call it God. You could say this is a talent inspired or gifted by God for me to try and help people if I can and give people joy and entertainment in the process. And I'm completely open to that interpretation as long as I feel like I'm using it for good. Otherwise, it's coming from somewhere else. It's not a source I want to be connected to, whatever it is. You say God, the universe, biology, whatever puts in us what's there that we can use for that purpose. I feel like I rambled long enough. I don't know if you have any comments on all that stuff.
Fine. Well, in terms of, here's the thing. A lot of people, when it comes to Christianity or God or religion, there's this idea where because God is so big, it's hard for people to grasp because he's ununderstandable. And because of that, and sometimes there's a lack of, I don't want to say lack of proof because I feel like there's plenty of proof and evidence that we can look at for that, but there is a lack of, what's the word I'm trying to find? We don't have the capability of fully understanding, and I feel like that hinders a lot of us from even being open. And I'm not saying you specifically, I'm just saying people in general I've noticed. And one of the things that I realized in my own journey with God is that if he was understandable, then he'd be too small for me. If I could understand him, he'd be too small. And what I realized is, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So God is outside of space, time, and matter.
Mm-hmm.
Because at a specific point, God said, in the beginning, time, space, God created the heavens and the earth, and then matter. And so he had to be outside those things in order to create it. And all we have privilege and understanding of is within space, time, and matter. So even when it comes to dreams and visions and stuff like that, we can hook ourselves up to science machines and do scans and neurons. But you're right. There's a spiritual aspect to dreams that is outside of space, time, and matter that's going to be hard for us to comprehend. And the only way that we can have growth in those is to come to God, I believe, not with a help me to understand it within space, time, and matter, but come to him because we want to know his presence and his likeness and bear his image here on earth. And through this process, we develop these spiritual giftings to do that, which happens through what I would call like a spiritual realm. So for example, there's a lot of people that believe in aliens. And I had a friend once who was saying, man, I don't think I can ever be a Christian. And I said, why is that? He goes, because Christians don't believe in aliens. And I don't think I can believe in Christianity because I believe in aliens. And I looked at him and I go, hey, guess what? He goes, what? And I said, I believe in aliens. And he goes, seriously? You believe in aliens? And I said, yes, I do. But not in the manner that you believe in them. He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, you believe in extraterrestrial aliens, I'm assuming, right? He goes, yeah. I go, well, I don't. I believe in interterrestrial. I believe in interdimension aliens, which I would also call spirits that can take the form of many things. And so, and I tell people this, that the spiritual realm, so like according to our physical realm, there's also what I believe a spiritual realm that we don't see. And what I find so unique, so I have a friend who was the director of NASA under Trump's administration. Like he was the head director. And I asked him, I was like, hey, I got two questions for you. Do aliens exist? And is there a metaverse? And he's like, well, I have no idea about the metaverse because we just don't know. But when we came to aliens, he talked about, not extraterrestrials, but there is life in terms of organisms on other planets that they can identify, but not like intelligent life like we are. But in so saying that, in this process, oh man, I just lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
What was I talking about right before I went to NASA?
Friend at NASA, and it was the shit. I was trying to follow along too, and not think my own thoughts as much as I could.
Spiritual.
Yes.
Spiritual. Okay, so I believe that there is the spiritual realm that we can't see. You know, C.S. Lewis says it's like a 2D world trying to understand a 3D world. We just can't.
I love those analogies. Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, and so we live in a 3D world, but we don't have the spiritual awakeness to fully see what's going on spiritually around us. But it's here. It exists. And some of these giftings can ebb and flow in and out of this realm. And so that's one reason I leaned into my friend and I told him, you know, I believe what we often look at as aliens could be demonic spirits. And I even said, so you know how there's this whole thing with alien abductions, right? And I was like, yeah. Okay, well, I believe that there will be a day and time somewhere in the future where Christ will return and Christians will be raptured at some point. How? Post, pre, mid, after? I have no idea. But my thinking is that in the spiritual war of things, there are things that are being set in motion and in place in the physical world to have belief systems that when things happen, instead of people believing the truth, that they'll believe a lie. So when Christians get raptured, I believe there's going to be a spin and people are going to call it an alien abduction. Oh yeah. That's a theory I have heard before. And in terms of my, say, agnostic atheism, people think that, it's most strongly connected with the spiritual, with religious systems, so to speak. I am also an agnostic atheist on the question of aliens. I don't know. Maybe. It's one of those things where it's like, but do I believe necessarily? Yes. I haven't seen it yet. Or for whatever that's worth, you know, in some necessary connection of belief is lacking in me. So I'm open to, I call myself a credulous skeptic. I'm willing to believe anything. My bar for proof for me to say, yes, I think that is necessarily true is pretty high. So I do have it on good authority that a lot of these UFO sightings that people see are actually not UFOs and top secret testing. Sure. Also a valid theory. Yeah. That's what I love. I love the speculation. And sometimes people share speculation and other people go conspiracy theory. And I'm like, it's a theory. Who knows? This is just interesting to ponder. And if we don't think about the full range of ideas, we're going to be missing something. I've had a lot of conspiracy theories that I've had that have come true over the last 2 years. So I'm just saying, like, they're not conspiracy if they're fact and true. If they are later proven to be true, that bar for proof has been met in a lot of things. And there's a interesting thing you were talking about, the idea of truth and being held out as lies in our current political climate without claiming either side necessarily. Each side looks at the other as believing something false. We've got this weird, hard schism in divergent perceptions of reality going on right now, which is maybe why I'm having so much fun in the dream realm, because I'm like, dreams are always real and they don't actually happen. It's all in your head, but it's all real. It is an experience. It can never be wrong. Whatever you're experiencing, it happened in that it's what you saw or felt. So we talked slightly off topic, but fascinating stuff for a good long time. And I don't know if, I keep waiting for feedback. Would you prefer I just like interview people and not even do the dream thing? Because I could do that. Just let me know. Interview away. We can talk about dreams. Dude, I'm an open book. I'm doing an interview. That's my wife. Good morning. I don't know what she wanted. She tries not to interrupt me. I appreciate it. Love her. What were you saying? I'm sorry. We're talking about you can interview me. We're talking about the different directions you can take it from here. Yeah. Well, since I build this as the Dreamscapes Dream Interpretation Show, we're going to keep up with it until people tell me they don't care. Or they'd rather see me do something else. So that would bring us to
The dream. We're going to listen to a recent, relatively recent or past dream experience. I'm just going to shut up and listen, and our friend Evan's going to tell me beginning to end what he saw, felt, heard, believes about it, and then we're going to see if we can make some sense of it together. So I'm ready when you are.
Let's see. Well, most of the dreams I already have, I already know what they are. So to come up with one that I don't know would be difficult.
Sure. Well, I've done them. I've done these in the past where people have their own understanding of it, and they kind of keep that to themselves for the most part until I start asking questions that direct their attention in a particular way. And then at the very end, we go and say, well, here's what I thought it meant, and here's what you were able to kind of help me see about it and where they overlap, where they're different.
I'll give you one.
Sure.
I feel like I already know what it is, but just for fun.
Yeah.
So I had a dream. And in the dream, there was a person who I knew who was a contractor standing in front of me. And he said, Evan, he goes, it would be an honor for me to build your dream house. Thank you so much for trusting me to do this. He goes, I'm going to create the blueprints. And I'm even going to buy the material needed to put it together. But it's going to be your responsibility to follow the blueprints and to build it. And I'll pay for your son's tuition. So I know what this means because I felt like I had the interpretation immediately when I woke up. And then there's a lot of truth that happened that came to fruition. So I'm going to see how you interpret it, and then I'll tell you what it is and then what happened.
Okay. Very interesting. So the entire dream seems like it was just that very brief experience where this person spoke to you, laid out that statement, and then that's the full sum total of the whole dream?
Yep.
Okay. Interesting. So that is phase 1. Phase 2, deep dive. What can we do with that? You said this is a person you did know in real life?
Yeah. He was one of my best friends in real life. So that's kind of we'll call that important.
Okay, fair enough.
One of my best friends, and his job is construction.
Okay. Do you have a sense of the scene around you at the time? Where did this conversation take place?
Couldn't tell you.
There was you couldn't see anything else around you? No sense of where you were at all?
This was 2 years ago, so it was just him in front of me.
Okay. And that, fair enough. There may be nothing there. And there may have been at the time no sense that was unusual, that you weren't in a specific physical location during that exchange?
Correct.
Okay.
And the reason why is because the emphasis was more on what was being said.
Fair enough. Yeah. And sometimes it could be even vague to the point where you don't even have a strong, not you, but anyone, doesn't even have a strong visual image of the conversation and facing the person and what they were wearing and seeing their face and watching their lips move. You just know you were there and they were there and this is what they said. And then that becomes the memory that you take out with you. But that said, did you have a sense of yourself or him in any physical alignment, facing each other?
Yeah, we were facing each other.
Okay. Which may or may not be relevant compared to standing shoulder to shoulder, looking at something else. This was very face-to-face communication. Not even sure if that's relevant, but we'll see. And do you remember having said anything to engage him, or this was him coming to make a speech, an announcement kind of thing?
Yeah, this was more him speaking to me.
And you don't remember saying anything back to him or your response, your thoughts, your feelings as he was speaking?
As soon as it was done, I woke up.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And then I knew exactly what it meant.
And as far as you know, the words you chose that I tried to write down, if I could, verbatim almost, but not quite, that is the gist of what he was saying, or pretty close to what he exactly said.
That was, well, we'll say it's the gist, but that would be pretty accurate.
Pretty close. Fair enough. Yeah. Sometimes we put our own interpretation on things. There's a phenomenon people have tried to describe of secondary elaboration. I don't know if you've come across that term. And it's where our waking consciousness starts making sense of the dream as soon as we're awake, and it influences what we think is our memory of the dream. That's a whole Gordian knot that I don't know that anyone can untie. You describe what you think happened. So sometimes it may or may not be relevant, but I like to kind of get into that. If you have this strong sense, that's pretty much what he said, but not exact. Fair enough. That might be its own brand of important. So what he said, so he addressed you by name. He said, Evan, I want, what did he say? Can't read my own damn handwriting.
I'm honored that you want me to build your dream house.
So he started with a personal address. You know, he's establishing that this is him. He knows you. So there's not only does he look like your friend, your brain or your experience of him is saying this is this person in this context. And I got the puppy. Oh, peanut butter. Good morning. He sleeps on the bed and then he comes and sleeps on me. So a personal address using your name, and he expresses that he would consider it an honor. So there's something about him wanting you to know that he knows this is going to benefit you, and that's something that is meaningful to him. He wants to be of benefit, and he feels that you know is an honor. And I just love, you know, just on a personal level, I love that too, is like, that's how I would describe a lot of these dream interpretation interviews. It's like, it is, you know, as much as people say, you know, thank you for my time. But I say, thank you for yours. It's not only are you helping me make a show, I couldn't do it without you, but it is, I would say, my honor to try to offer that kind of benefit to people if I can. So I very much get that vibe. And what he is offering is to build your dream home, but in a specific way. He's not actually going to build it himself.
Right.
What he's going to give you is the tools to get the job done.
Correct.
The blueprint and the materials. Do you have any sense of why he might have phrased it as it would be an honor? Is he say to help you build your dream home, or to build it for you? Like he initially said, build it for you, and then changed tack. How would you?
That's a good point. Let's see. So I think I might have messed up. Sure. I said build. I think the actual, I have to go back and look at my journal, but it'd be an honor to design.
Okay.
Or that's probably more accurate.
Good deal. So this is someone, the benefit, he's there's establishing a personal connection, seeking to offer benefit from a place of caring about you, wanting your life to be better. And what he can offer is the benefit of his experience, his unique talent of being a builder, in giving you the blueprint. And that's a very powerful metaphor too. These blueprints and materials. We need the knowledge to get it done, and we need the ability to do it. Print, knowledge, materials. When I mention that specifically, the idea that blueprint might link to knowledge and materials might link to ability, does that feel right to you? Or would you characterize it in a different way, different words for those specific concepts?
Repeat that.
Sure. And there's two separate ideas I'm playing with in my head is, for me, blueprint inspired the thought, knowledge, like know-how,
Right.
and materials linked specifically in my mind to ability, like the physical ability to perform a task or the materials necessary to build the thing. If you conceive of it in a different way, if different associations come to mind, we'll go with, what you got, of course.
How about this? I'm going to let you run with it.
Okay.
And then then you can share what you think, and then I'll share what I think, and then also what happened.
Gotcha. It does become a little more tricky like this, and I'm not complaining. This is its own unique kind of fun where you're.
And I'm trying to look for the dream.
Yeah, fair enough. Take your time. I do enjoy this. This is a different kind of challenge from someone who comes in with no idea, and we're completely unfolding it. This is definitely requires a lot more collaboration in terms of you got to hold back just enough you don't tip your hand and
Exactly.
Yeah, and I gotta try not to push for too many specifics that would cause that to happen, while still riding that line of getting something useful. So those are the things that came to my mind, and what I do is that, I do frequent resonance checks. Is that how you conceive of it? Are there different words you would use for it? So you're thinking, it's close enough for now, or at least that makes a particular kind of sense to you. Let me get a fresh piece of paper. Okay. Do you want to read it out and see if it's any different than what you described? You don't have to.
Okay, so all right. I'm trying not to say some of the specific stuff because it'll just tip it.
Gotcha. You may have interjected.
Yesterday, I had a dream that I believe was from God. Dan, my friend, was standing in front of me and said it would be an honor to design the blueprints for your dream home. He said that he would even buy the materials for us, but we were the ones who would have to build it and put it together by following his blueprints. P.S. He said he could take care of my son's tuition for school. That was the dream.
Okay. All right. So it was almost word for word the same. There was something you mentioned, some feeling might have been inspired of, thank you so much for trusting me. Did you have an impression as that was happening that, what am I trying to say? That he was only offering this because you were open to it. Does that make sense?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely there.
That's a very powerful thing too in our interpersonal relationships. The idea that, if you're going to receive something from someone, you have to be willing to receive it. They can't just give. It's never going to make it to you. You're not going to accept it unless you're ready, unless you're interested. So there's very, very much something there, and the willingness to take advice, blueprints, or follow someone's example is a huge marker of trust in them. The idea that they have something worthy or valuable to share that you actually want because you believe it's good, beneficial. It's there. There's a certain kind of magic in that relationship dynamic. These are the thoughts that come to mind when I'm looking at the circumstance. And it's interesting too that this person, at least in your conception of this situation, what your vision chose to show you was that this person could only offer the advice, the design, but could or should only offer that much, and the rest would necessarily be up to you or should be up to you. The idea of there's something in there that they can't or shouldn't do it for you. There's something there.
Man, I just closed it.
And I don't know that I'm asking you to give me a specific rereading of it.
Right.
Again, these are my impressions there. It's the nature of the offer is to give you give you the tools, give you the knowledge, so to speak, and even it's interesting. Maybe materials linked to ability is not quite right. There's material circumstances, materials that are necessary. I mean, you can't build a ship without wood, so you got to have the wood. But then there's also the ability to use the wood, which is a physical ability you must possess, that kind of thing. But then there's also the know-how. How do you build a ship? Hell if I know. I do not have that skill, so I couldn't do it without a blueprint, without someone showing me. This is someone definitely showing you the way, and what they're showing you the way is your dream home. And I'm not getting the idea that dream home is a physical place. The first thing that came to my mind was the idea that dream home tends to represent, in a lot of people, maybe different from you, but an ideal set of circumstances, the place you would be comfortable living, the ideal living situation, which doesn't necessarily mean a physical home. It's more like the circumstances in which you will find yourself if you work towards a particular goal. And that goal being the ideal goal is your dream home. It can be being at home in yourself, in a job, in a particular environment. It can also be literally a physical dream home. But I'm looking at this whole thing as more of a metaphor for, I mean, the idea that comes to my mind is this person's actually showing you, he represents a role model for spiritual growth. You look up to him and want to emulate, you want to follow his blueprint to build your ideal self or circumstances in the future. That might be the bottom line for me. That might be actually what I think the whole thing's about. That just kind of popped into my head. I don't know that there's more questions I could ask to get any deeper or more specific. What's that?
What about the last part?
The last part. The son's tuition. Okay, if we go with my thought that that's the metaphorical story arc that's coming out there, what would put you in a position to pay your son's tuition would be this good life that you would be able to construct by following the right blueprint, the right example, and that it would actually be the fruits of that generous gift of a model for how to live well that would yield the ability to send your child to school and pay their tuition. So in a way, he's not giving you the money. He's giving you the dream home living situation where you have the ability. So it's kind of an indirect payment, so to speak. That's where I would go with that. I might be way off. That may not be what you got out of it at all. But are there more directions? Are there more items you want to direct me to try and finagle, or that's good enough for a guess? And
all right, so you ready?
Okay, let's do it. Yeah.
Unveil. Okay. So in the dream, Dan, who is one of my best friends, while it was Dan in front of me, it wasn't Dan. It was God. And so then that goes back to this deep, intimate relationship that you're talking about, which existed of someone who I want to be like. So I didn't say, hey, I want you to build the blueprints and here they are. Here's my ideas. No, it was an honor for me to design, which you're right, that God is designing the life for my wife and I and my family, and that we want to follow it, that we're consulting him for what he wants in our life, and that he will design it for us, and that he'll give us everything we need to build that life, physically, spiritually, emotionally, financially, in terms of ministry, a career, everything. But it's our job to follow that design and to build it ourselves. He won't build it for us, but he'll provide everything we need to be able to build it. And then, and I'll pay your son's tuition. Around that time, this was COVID season when it first kind of started, and schools weren't going to go in person. And the local schools were kind of back and forth on what they were going to do. And we just knew that we couldn't keep him home, and both of us work from home. And because we have like 3-4 kids.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't doable. And so I just didn't know what to do. And so we had been contemplating trying to put him in private school, but we did not have the money for private school. Like we legitimately didn't have the money to put him in private school. And so when I woke up, it was, Evan, I will design the life according to my will and my purposes that will be your dream. And all you have to do is follow it, and I'll give you everything you need to build that out. And he cared enough about what I was dealing with in my own situation with my son that there was a tremendous school fee that we had to pay of like $8,000 that we didn't have money for. My son, the school wrote off like half of it. And then I had a huge bump in sales like a month later that basically more than covered the rest. So
wow. So very, very much kind of a blending of the spiritual, metaphysical with the possibly quasi-prophetic-ish. Hard to tell in some of those circumstances. I mean, if you believe, absolutely. And if you're more skeptical like I am, you're like, well, aspirational and it came to pass, lucky coincidence. I don't know. I'm not going to discount either possibility.
Yeah.
Well, so, how do you feel like I did with my guess in that direction? Was I onto something? Does it feel like it kind of lined up roughly with what you were experiencing?
I think you were 50% dialed in. Yeah, it's nice. 75% dialed in.
I'll take it. Yeah. Because we were also working with the idea of you're holding back a little bit and usually ask for people's impressions. Well, what did you think? And it's tough when someone says, I already think I understand exactly what it means. Then what do I do? So no, but these are always fun experiments. So, if I got 50% of the way there, I'll take it.
So I will say this. I'm not going to go through this whole dream, but I will say this. Again, what I'm sharing was a dream. So for anyone listening, don't take it as gospel by any means. Okay. But I had a dream that, and I need to be specific. This was before Russia invaded Ukraine. Okay. This was, 3 weeks before Russia invaded Ukraine. And so I had a dream where I was talking to the former president of the United States. And someone's like, all right, hey, tell him what you saw. And so in this dream, I was there in two persons, okay? There was the person, let's call him first person, Evan, talking to President Trump face to face. And they're standing, face to face. And then there's third person, Evan, me, watching this happen. And third person me doesn't know what first person is saying. I'm just observing. And so first person Evan tells Trump that there is going to be what looks like another virus that spreads throughout the world. But it's not an actual virus. It's a biological attack. And it's going to look like it comes from the west of Russia. And when I was saying this, like a map pulled up. And from the west of Russia, it was spreading to the rest of the world. And it was extremely deadly. Far more deadlier, far more scarier than COVID. Ironically, the people who lived more in fear of it also had a higher risk of death. So there was this warning, like, don't be afraid. And as I'm telling Trump this, I'm saying it looks like a biological attack to affect the body. It looks like it's coming out of the west of Russia, but it feels like it's a push to actually be a one world order. And Trump says, well, what do you want me to do about it? I said, you're the only one who can take this message and go public with it and shine light on it before it happens. And people believe you. And he goes, well, what is this called? And I said, it has to do with TSP1. It affects TSP1. And I woke up. Ironically, I don't know anything about medical stuff. So I went and Googled TSP1. And it's dude, I don't even understand. I'll pull it up and read what TSP1 is, but I don't even understand it.
Sure. The first thing that came to my mind was the cleaning solution. I think it's called TSP. It's a calcium rust lime remover or a metal polisher. This is apparently something completely different.
So golly, there's a lot of big words here. Thrombospindin family comprises of 5 multifunctional glycoproteins whose best study member is TSP1. This reticular cell protein is potent antigenetic agent that inhibits ENDOTHELIAL.
Endothelial? Something, yeah.
Hydration and proliferation and induces endothelial APOPTOSIS.
Oh, apoptosis, I think. I don't know why I know the word. I don't remember what it means.
Studies have demonstrated a regular role of TSP1 in the cell of migration and in activation of the latent transformation of growth factor beta. These functions of TSP1 translates into the broad modulation of the immune process. So here's where the immune that's when it said the immune process, that was like, okay.
That's about the only thing I understood. Yeah. I don't know what the rest of that means.
In the dream, this biological attack, what it did is it affected the immune system not to be able to reproduce antibodies to heal itself from sickness and disease.
Wow. Yeah.
That's what the biological
attack. And then you go and look this up and it's like, what the hell is this? Yeah.
Yeah. So all I understand is it affects the immune system. That's all I understand. So, but as I was sharing this dream with other people, they're like, oh, so it's kind of like AIDS. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
AIDS affects the immune system from being able to basically reproduce antibodies. And he also, I don't know.
Those natural processes are irreplaceable. I mean, you start messing with them and turning them on or off, or just messing with them, tweaking them on purpose. Right. I don't know if that's a good idea. I'm very skeptical about that kind of thing.
Hey, I'm going to throw that out there. If it happens, then we can say, God told Evan. If not, it was just a weird dream.
Yeah. And my brain goes to,
but here's what's crazy.
Go ahead.
Then Russia invaded Ukraine like 3 or 4 weeks later. And then we found out we have 25 biolabs that we've hidden in Ukraine.
Those were the things I was thinking as well, is that this is very much connected. Yeah.
Yeah.
It depends on whether you'd had any subconscious knowledge of any of that stuff. You felt something brewing. Sometimes I look to a differential diagnosis. I look to rule out explainable causes, kind of like the ghost hunters that are like, well, was that just a door creaking or was that a weird voice we caught on video? You try and rule out the door creaking and you go, must have been a weird voice. And then how do you prove someone subconsciously knew certain information and put it together to have a dream with this specific word? I can't explain that.
Right. There's no way I knew this word. No way.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, I don't even fully understand it.
Yeah, well, it doesn't seem like something you would just kind of randomly come across and connect those dots. Oh, yeah, that. Like the first thing I thought was a cleaning solution. I think there's something called TSP out there. It's a cleaning solution. That's the first thing I would have thought of because, and this is a good demonstration of where my knowledge of the world is a limiting factor in the associations I'm capable of offering to people. I would have gone in a completely different direction and thought that someone was telling themselves they need to clean up a mess in their own life, that kind of thing. Who knows? Maybe that's a more accurate understanding for a particular person if it feels right to them. But
yeah. Well, the weird thing is that this information took me before the former president of the United States. Like so it was like a big deal. And I remember in the dream, I was like, hey, I have no proof of what I'm about to tell you. Like this came directly from God.
Which doesn't carry a lot of weight with most people these days. Hey, God told me something you need to know. Sure, crazy man. That's what everyone thinks. Yeah.
That's why I'm going to tell people don't take it as gospel.
Yeah.
It was a dream, and it could be only a dream. It's just weird that then, like 3 weeks later, Russia invaded Ukraine, and then we find out that we have 25 biolabs. Which, by the way, we don't need biolabs. Let's just be honest. Like
I waffle on that. Yeah, I do because
we don't need to be studying gain of function for diseases because
I don't like that at all.
Like that's what caused. The other.
Yeah, the thing we are the thing we're not allowed to mention due to terms of service, etc. Just to be on the safe side. But no, I just in broad strokes, I tend to agree of like this is where I'm conflicted. Yes, I want us to be able to study existing things to find a way to overcome it if it's necessary. I don't know that it's necessary to make it more deadly and dangerous to study that. Why do that on purpose? Maybe there's a good argument for it, but I'm thinking like, maybe don't do that. Maybe have these, if they got a CDC thing in one country, like in America with all these standards and protocols and whatnot, but all these labs around the world doing this different research that I don't know. I'm conflicted. But I'm not comfortable with it for sure.
I read the book a while back. Let me see if I can pull it up here.
Yeah. That is cool. You got the thing in the background going there. I need to do something like my background is cats, which fair enough. But I like your setup, the bookshelf, and the flag, and the commemorative heirloom posted in the corner. Also beautiful.
So there's this book called "The Physics of God," and it's playing through my TV. Let's see here. When was this written?
You got that set up on like a Chromecast?
Apple.
Gotcha. Fair enough.
So the book isn't a Christian book, by the way, okay? Even though it says the physics of God. I'm going to pull it up so we can know when this was written.
Well, this is one of the reasons why I also find it important that someone who is an agnostic atheist and calls himself a wizard talks about God and spirituality. I'm not afraid of it. I don't oppose it. I'm not an anti-theist in that sense. Right. I just don't share the necessary belief to say that is my belief structure. It's all fascinating, and I think it's all relevant. I think it's all good to discuss. So go ahead.
I read this book, The Physics of God, earlier this year, and it was published in 2017, before That Which Cannot Be Named came out.
Right.
Infectious disease. And as I was reading this book, it talks about the Human Genome Project back in like the early 2000s or 2012 or something like that.
I was kind of excited about that when it happened. Yeah.
And basically, they were creating spiked proteins to study how it affected the body and how we needed more spike proteins to fight infections and diseases. But in this process, they found, again, I'm not that great with scientific terminology, but that right now we only have a certain amount of protein in our body, but our body has the ability to make proteins that it's needed to fight off infectious disease. And that's what they found out through this experiment. And where it came from was, what was the term? The life source, the soul source? No, not what was it? Let's just call it life source. It probably has a different name in the book, but they say it came from this life source. But in studying genetics in the deep, like the more layers they peeled away, they found this life source that was holographic and they couldn't see behind it, but out of it flowed everything that produced life. And it itself could change DNA, it could change protein, it could change things. And what was unique is they also studied this in conjunction with people who had multiple personality disorders. And so when people had multiple person, like their eye color would change, they'd get scars, like things would physically change on their body, but would come out of this life source. And I think that life source is like the spiritual aspect of the soul.
Yeah. We have a lot of, mankind has spent a long time trying to understand what is beyond us, what is beyond our, and we've come up with so many of these phrases. We call it soul, we call it energy, we call it vibrating strings. I mean, we keep inventing new terms to try and understand what these things are. And the concept of dimensions, that's even a loose term that a lot of people don't grasp. The difference between going from 2D to 3D is we get that because we are 3D and we can see what 2D is and we know it's flat on paper. Even that is technically three-dimensional. It's paper in the real world. It's pencil graph. But going from 3D to say 4D, whatever that fourth dimension is, it's something that is parallel to us and intersects us on levels that we just can't even perceive. We don't have talk about the blueprint's one thing. We're trying to come up with these mental maps, but the physical ability, the material necessary sensors. It's
an immaterial world that is physically present that we cannot see or hardly operate in.
Yeah, we got that dichotomy of we are material beings trying to understand an immaterial phenomenon that has an interact. And it blows my mind too, because how does a non-material substance, so to speak, interact with a physical substance? Like there's a missing piece of that puzzle that we just don't understand, and may be incapable of understanding how the spiritual and the material interact, what that interaction is, and how it actually works. I spend a lot of time thinking about that kind of stuff. Like, how's that even possible? Right?
So I want to challenge because someone out there is thinking that energy is God. I personally don't believe that. I believe God is the creator of energy, and so I want to challenge whoever has this philosophical belief of God being energy. Energy can't create itself out of nothing.
Mm-hmm. There's the entropy problem too. Energy dissipates over time. Yeah. You getting down, Booba? You want to get down? Okay.
So what is the absolute source of energy? And I think holiness is. It's God. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Right? But also in the beginning, he said, let there be light. People talk about the Big Bang. I believe in the Big Bang, not in the way that evolution happens through the Big Bang, but that we have evidence of the bang of not in the beginning of let there be light. Imagine darkness, and then all of a sudden the power and the authority of the word of God coming out into existence. That's not just going to be some like trickly thing. Like that's going to be a powerful force. And I think that's where we see the actual Big Bang, and that's where we see the evidence of it.
Oh yeah. That's been a belief of mine for a long time too, in terms of how do I characterize belief? Things that make sense. There is in my mind nothing mutually exclusive with the idea of God created the universe by the Big Bang. Done. Why not? Why not that specific method? There's nothing unique to either perspective that excludes the other. So I'm like, fair enough. And I think what you're saying too, the idea of energy itself being God, it doesn't quite fit. And I think you're right about that. Is the idea that energy it's like force. It doesn't have purpose behind it. So it couldn't encapsulate the creative energy by itself. It's something the creative energy uses. This is
going to go on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Can I share my screen real quick?
Oh, sure. Yeah, go for it. It'll just pop up in the window that I've got for you.
Can you enable it for me?
Oh, that's a good question. I've never done that before. We're watching the wizard fumble live.
Go down to share screen.
Okay, I'm clicking on share screen.
Make me.
Multiple participants can share simultaneously. Is that?
Yeah.
See if that works.
Okay.
This is a first. Never done this. If that didn't work, I can try something else. Maybe, do I need to go under advanced options?
We're good.
Okay. Oh, so, that went big. I need to find out. That's not going to display properly. Wow.
Big on your side?
Yeah. It's okay. We're experimenting. This is fun. I want to try to...
This image where my cursor is?
Well, yeah, that's actually popping up where my face would be, but is not. So go for it. As long as we can see what you're trying to show me. Yeah.
This is in the Whirlpool Galaxy. Okay. It is the centermost part of the Whirlpool Galaxy.
Yeah.
Right? It's a cross.
That looks like a cross to me. It looks like the position of someone standing on the ground looking up at the cross. And there appears to be a darkened spot as if a person were there.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like to me. That's amazing.
It's a cross. It's in the center of the Whirlpool Galaxy. And then there's also the eye. Hold on.
See if we can get another one here. It would be amazing if my my little Dreamscapes podcast became like the new Art Bell thing. Like he would talk about all this stuff. I loved that in the 90s. Man, Art Bell, rest in pepperoni, my friend. That's a great man.
I wish I would have had this beforehand.
It's okay.
But there is, I think there is an eye in one of the galaxies, but biblically speaking, I should have had the, you know what, forget it.
It's okay. In a way, a lot of the galaxies look like eyes. There's repeating patterns. I don't know if you're familiar with the mathematical thing, the Mandelbrot sets. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before.
I have not.
Fair enough. And I only know of it, I believe, because of Piers Anthony, who wrote some books. Great, fun author from my childhood. And it's the idea of infinitely repeating loops based on mathematical algorithms, that these shapes recreate themselves infinitely large and infinitely small. And that goes back to what a lot of, folks would say, Babby's first philosophical acid trip or whatever, the idea that, man, what if our planet is just an atom in a much bigger body of a dude living in a much bigger universe? And I'm like, all possible. So
in Proverbs 15:3, the eyes of the Lord are everywhere, keeping watch on the wicked and good.
And that has, well, if you look at galaxies, maybe, or the idea that, the philosophy, we're getting into interesting stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But I think about this stuff all the time too. And the idea that, how is God all knowing? Well, there's the metaphysical thing of we are limited physical beings. He is not. So fair enough. But that my conception of it tends to be, so being an agnostic atheist, bouncing all over the place here, I'm closest to, say, our founding fathers' deist beliefs in terms of, if I were to lean into something, it would be like nature itself, the physical universe itself is, say, the body of God. We are living in this so that everything that happens is seen. The literally cause and effect is the mechanism of witnessing action. Does that make sense? Where I'm going there?
In a non-Judeo-Christian perspective, you could make maybe a case for that. In the Judeo-Christian perspective, God spoke things into existence. So, for example, we go back to in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, hovering over the face of the deep. So what ended up happening is God spoke land, he spoke water, he spoke light, he spoke animals, creation, all that. And so we are in his creation that he spoke into existence, but we aren't in him physically because he's outside of even his own creation.
And that's a fair point too. And that actually fits with, the other half of what I'm very much obsessed with the yin yang stuff in terms of trying to understand these dichotomies. So we are both, in my estimation, my thought process on this, without saying I believe it necessarily, but both inside the physical body of God in that sense, and he exists outside of it simultaneously. So I don't know. Is any of this real? Hell if I know. Am I right or wrong? But
in the Christian perspective, so I'm going to do two things. So in the Christian perspective, we have him in us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But we have him in us because we are connected to him. Okay. So in John 15, it says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the handmaiden. Every branch in me that beareth no fruit. Oh, this is King James Version. I'm going to change this. Hold on. Go to
That's all right. Pick your preferred translation.
Yeah, let's just go. I like that in New King James.
Well,
here we go.
Did you find it? Okay.
Yeah. So I am the true vine. My Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes and cuts away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, that in me you may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I've spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. And this goes even back to that dream that I was telling you with Dan.
Oh, yeah.
I am the vine, and you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, bears much fruit. For without me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered, and they gather them and throw them into the fire, and then they are burned. If you abide in me, and my word abides in you, you will ask whatever you desire, and it'll be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, that you be my disciples. So there's this dichotomy of us remaining in him, and him in us. And it's not in the context that we are physically like this is him and we're in him, but in a spiritual aspect that we are connected to him through the blood of Jesus Christ in the spiritual realm that we cannot physically see.
Yeah, but getting back to that multidimensional thing of like trying to conceive of a fourth, 12th, 19th, 2000th dimension that probably exists. I mean, as far as we'll never be able to see it or touch it in a way that makes sense. I've also had this great crazy idea that those old cartoons where the character goes and their head pops for whatever reason. Just I have an iconic image of that. I kind of thought of that as the Big Bang style of thing. And this is, again, not being specifically a Christian. You could say this, well, that doesn't quite line up with what I believe. Fair enough. But that I've always conceived of it that the animating energy, the soul, so to speak, is infinitesimal sparks of the soul of God. And this may or may not comport with certain perspectives of the Christian thing, but it's like, and that also goes to the idea of how does God know everything? It's like, well, God exists at the end of time when all these sparks have come back to the whole and all of these experiences exist in the same being again simultaneously. Anyway, so that idea of one soul of God in 7 billion sparks on the earth is kind of how I've always conceived it, which, I mean, in my estimation, whether that's strictly biblical or not, that's why.
You ever watched Loki?
The Loki series? Not yet, no.
Okay. Well, there's this part where Loki meets the timekeepers, and the timekeepers control timelines, and that they met one of the timekeepers, and the timekeeper could not see beyond a specific point because up until that point he could see everything. However, when Loki actually confronted the timekeeper, that was not like he saw the confronting, but he never saw what happened after that because that hadn't yet happened. It was really interesting.
It is, yeah.
But in the terms of looking at through a Christian perspective, like you were saying, God as the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. He's seen it all because he's outside of time.
Simultaneously existing before time and after time and all throughout time at every point in time in a way we can't even comprehend. So all of that stuff, see, without even being a believer, all of that stuff makes perfect sense to me in terms of rational explanation, a conceptually coherent description. That's where I'm coming from on a lot of that stuff. It's been a great talk, and I say that in terms of offering you the chance to wrap it up if you wanted to, or if you wanted to talk more about dream stuff, if you had another challenge for me, or if you feel like we rambled all over some great topics.
I think we nailed it.
Yeah, this has been, I mean, probably for folks watching out there, speaking of, should I even do the dreams or just talk to people? Sometimes dreams are real short and we just talk about whatever comes up, and that's perfectly fine with me. And hopefully everyone finds it equally fascinating. I haven't been bored for a second. So,
well, I had fun. So thank you for having me on and, plugging my podcast earlier. So I appreciate
absolutely. Well, we're gonna do it again. I'm gonna tell everybody watching right now. This is Evan Herman. That's Herman with 2 R's, HERRMAN. And you can find thewholepersonpodcast.com, or you can find The Whole Person podcast on YouTube, different podcasting platforms. And I'll do my housekeeping. Hey, stop what you're doing, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, buy my books. Direct donations, coffee mug, t-shirt, all that good stuff. I'm not embarrassed, but I don't like asking people for money. But if you like what I do, if you want me to keep doing it, I do need wise pay. I need someone to play De Medici to my Da Vinci. So if you're out there and if you are an independently wealthy person and you would like to be my sole benefactor, I'll take it. I'll take all your money. Long story short on that one. But
looking for a sugar daddy that can help sponsor everything that's going on.
Intellectually, metaphysically, spiritually. Yes.
No, just financially a sugar daddy.
Financially, yes. That's what I'm talking about. But for intellectual purposes only. Yeah, and I'm just going to say, Evan, hey, thank you for being here. I appreciate your time.
You bet, man. Thank you.
Good deal. And everybody out there, thanks for listening.